The legal action alleges the government has and continues to, on both an individual and systemic level, willfully deny and conceal the risks posed by mefloquine.
They're going to argue this is PTSD. But there are telltale signs of mefloquine toxicity PTSD does not have.
The drug may be marketed under the brand name Lyrium, but Dr. Remington Nevin, a world expert on mefloquine toxicity with Johns Hopkins University in the U.S., has another name for it.
I call it a horror movie in a pill for good reason, because the effects of this drug you wouldn't wish on your worst enemy.
So far, some 3,000 veterans have expressed an interest in joining the mass tort. 900 have already signed their names to it, accusing the very government they were prepared to die in combat for of poisoning them.
So there is government money. There's just no federal government money. Every province administers their own health care. If, like we did in Alberta, we get provinces to recognize it, get that recognized in the legislation, have it a bill passed that says, yep, this is a real thing. Now, next year, when the government has grants, etc., we can apply, create a foundation, apply for grants, use those grants then to make the study.
Right. And I think you have the right idea going to the provinces for the recognition first. Once the provinces recognize and start funding this, then it becomes a question of, well, where are you on this one, federal government? Because Veterans Affairs is a federal mandate. So yeah, I mean, it sounds like it's one of those things where, you know, it's not just a battle, it's a war.
That's a wounded veteran! Yes! That's a wounded veteran! Yes! That's a wounded warrior right there! They got his teeth on his fucking head! That guy's yes, That's a wounded veteran! Yes! That's a wounded veteran! Yes! That's a wounded warrior right there! They got his teeth on his fucking head! That guy's yes,
Hey, what's up, troops? It's Ops Sgt-Maj for Veterans for Freedom, Jeff Evely, back with you now. Second one today on the 5th of January, 2023, so we're off to a good start so far this year. I have with me today one of our veteran brothers from another mother and V4F member, Luke, and he's here to spin us up on a little bit of sustainable living today. This seems to be a pretty hot topic for discussion out there in the freedom movement, especially as it pertains to a way for people to get off the system and gain some independence so that they're not getting the rug pulled out from under them by authoritarians squeezing them for all they're worth. But this is one more thing that you guys can do to protect yourselves out there. So with that, I think I'll say hi to Luke. And how you doing today out there, brother?
Come on, Jeff.
Going good.
Doing pretty good. It's been an interesting last couple of days. I got stranded when my truck broke down, so that set a bunch of other stuff I had to do back a couple of days. So now I'm actually in the car with 2 dogs and as you can hear, dogs, and my friend Ken, who's actually managing the project for me. He's got years of construction experience, so he's right here.
All right, awesome.
Take any questions that might come up.
Awesome. Sounds like we got an expert panel on our hands here, so all the better. So I thought I'd start us off here with just a little bit of what you were kind of plugging when we spoke earlier, and I found this website for these guys. This is Earthship Biotecture. So they have a website out there, and this is what they're all about. It's just helping people to build these structures that are self-contained, sustaining, not requiring any connection to a power grid, essentially. And I think their model is it's a little bit it kind of straddles, the modern lifestyle with the beatnik kind of feel at the same time. So what can you tell us about this, Luke?
Well, I can say so. That specific type of housing design, they've been building them since the 1970s. Sorry, my dog's misbehaving a little bit right now. Can you just bear with me for a moment? Hang on.
No problem. Yeah, I tell you what, I'll take a little scroll down here on the webpage. And this guy, I think, has a pretty neat model. And I haven't had a whole lot of time to apprise myself of it, but this is Earthship Biostructure or Biotecture. We are the #1 eco-construction and self-sufficient living company. We build autonomous houses. You can see some of our projects in our portfolio. We teach people to build autonomous houses at our Earthship Academy. We organize sustainable development and poverty relief projects all over the world. We allow people to learn about sustainability at our Vision Center and nightly rentals. So they kind of have their own little self-contained industry built up around this thing. It's pretty neat. And the pitch, not the pitch, but the plan, I guess, that they are pitching is that the 6 human needs for a harmonious life on Earth are food, energy, clean water, shelter, garbage management, and sewage treatment. So that's what they kind of build their model on. It's kind of the 6 pillars, I guess, of their sustainable living model. So yeah, it is pretty interesting to me. And how they achieve it, I guess, really depends on location. But this is pretty neat. I'm just going to check this out for a second. It says, we build Earthships for people. We have several designs that you can choose from according to your budget and location. You can purchase construction plans from our online store and build your own home or hire Earthship Biostructure to construct it for you. So those are global model Earthships, it says.
Yeah, so like I didn't go the route of actually like buying the Earthship plans. Like the way Michael Reynolds designed these buildings, one of those 6 pillars you mentioned, garbage management, designed materials to be taken out of the waste stream, like bottles, cans, tires, and actually used as construction materials. So you build the big load-bearing retaining walls for the structure that retain the earth berm that you bury your house in for thermal properties. Build those out of old tires that are rammed full of earth, and that's quite actually a labor-intensive process. I mean, it's great if you have a lot of bodies, a lot of time, and you don't have a lot of money. You can get the building materials for free or for really, really cheap because it's a waste material anyway.
Yeah.
And you can make a really, really sturdy structure out of it.
I
So
was just going to point out for our viewers here, like what they're showing in these diagrams. I don't know if you can see it that well or not, but these are tires. They're using tires to build the walls, and it looks like they're filling them with earth, and around the outside you can see they've built up the earth around it. So it's kind of an interesting, very simplistic idea, at least. So
that open end that you're looking at there, that open end faces south if you're in the northern hemisphere, because think about the angle of the sun at during the seasons as it changes. In the summer, the angle of the sun is like much higher, shining, high and straight downwards. And as you get into winter, the sun gets lower and lower and lower on the horizon. So if you think about the angle that the sun would be shining, if all of the front of that structure was all greenhouse glass, so you've got all this greenhouse glass here, and the sun's shining in on it at a near perpendicular angle, then it's shining past that glass, and it's hitting your concrete slab that you have sitting on the ground that makes up the floor of your house. The sun will heat that up during the day, and like a road does at night in the summer, it stores the heat, and it'll re-release it into your house when the sun sets.
Okay. And is concrete the preferred material for that then? Is it because of the kind of R value it has or something?
Well, so it's not about R value. This actually uses a different principle than R value. It's thermal mass. So you need R value underneath the concrete for sure, because I'm doing a couple layers of foam board R10 insulation, and that'll prevent the ground from sucking the heat out of the concrete.
Got it.
So that 4-inch concrete pad that you're walking on throughout the day will just get shone on by the sun, and it'll store the heat, right? Okay. And then you've insulated that pad from the ground using your R20 insulation. Yeah. The fact that the north, the east, and the west walls of your structure are actually backfilled. So you build them on the level of the ground, you build it up, and then you bury it after the fact.
Right.
So that allows the earth to sort of envelop your structure, and the only side that's actually open to the elements is the south face and the roof.
So it's nothing but sunshine coming in there.
That's all.
Yeah. And that's a neat idea. You just kind of dig out your little spot in the earth there. And I guess it's more like what is it called? The specific heat capacity, I guess, of concrete. Like it'll probably absorb the heat of the sun fairly quickly, and it's going to release it at the same rate that it was absorbed. So if it absorbs throughout the course of the day, then it's going to take the course of the night basically to release it. Except the nights are going to get a little bit longer, I guess, in the winter. So what do we do for that time of year?
So good question. So I've put some things. I've borrowed a lot of ideas from Earthships, but a lot of the systems and ideas in the house are my own. One of the concepts I'm playing with is the idea of a rocket stove mass heater that fires a wood-fired rocket stove that fires a wood-fired radiant floor. So basically, the front of your building there is all greenhouse glass, and the front third of the building is all going to be greenhouse. So I'm going to put this mass heater, this rocket stove, in the greenhouse. And Jeff, are you familiar with mass heaters? Do you know how they work?
I mean, when I think of no, I'm going to say no. Go ahead and let me know, because I was just about to ask what you meant by a rocket heater. It almost sounds like kind of like a tiger torch or something that just is stationary.
It's a type of a wood burning stove that's designed in such a way that once it gets going, it creates its own like suction air currents. Okay. So it's like a self-stoking fire, and they burn very, very hot. So you can load a couple of armloads of wood into it, and it'll burn at 1,500 degrees. And so basically what I'm going to do inside that combustion chamber is I'm going to have coiled copper pipe, and I'm going to run through a pump. I'm going to run glycol and water through those through that copper pipe, and it's going to be heated by the rocket stove as it burns, and that hot water is then going to get pumped into the radiant floor system. So on days when I don't have a lot of sunlight and I don't have a lot of solar gain, I'm still warming up that concrete pad using fired radiant floor.
Okay.
And if you design the system correctly, if you design it well, the coil that you're using, the coiled copper pipe that you're using as the heat exchanger inside the rocket stove, if you design the system right, you can potentially push all of that fluid through the system just using the heat of the stove. The convection.
It sounds a lot like kind of a similar, I guess, principle as oil hot water. Like it just kind of forces the hot water through the system in an oil hot water system, I guess. But is that kind of what you're describing here? Like there's a fluid element to it where you're using the glycol and whatnot to hold heat and to circulate the cold fluid back into the system for reheating and stuff like that. So it's something like that, is it?
Yeah, exactly. So the floors, the concrete pad, when it gets poured, it's going to have flexible like PEX, half-inch PEX line running all the way through it before we pour the pad, like when we pour the pad. And that whole system is all going to meet up at the mass heater. And basically a manifold is going to collect all the fluid from the lines coming out of the floor. It's going to send it to a pump, which is going to send it into the rocket stove. And then from inside the heat exchanger in the rocket stove, it's then going to get pushed back out into all of its destinations on in the concrete pad.
Okay. And there's like there's a pump running it there somewhere. So I think we're going to have to talk about power options soon enough here. But before we do, I just thought I'd give us a visual because we're talking about this rocket mass heater. So I thought I'd pull up a quick. This is about 2 minutes long, and I haven't watched this, folks, but this is a learning experience for me. So let's check this out.
A conventional wood stove is a metal box with a chimney. The fire goes in the box and the heat is extracted immediately. The temperature of the fire is usually about 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. The smoke goes up the chimney due to a thermosiphon. Over time, people learned that creosote would build up in the chimney and cause chimney fires, which could burn down the whole house. The solution was to insulate the chimney, holding a lot of heat in the chimney. When you have a hot fire in the stove, it would often get hot enough in the chimney to burn out the creosote, thus keeping the house safe. The downside is that a lot of heat ends up going out the chimney. So, if you want to keep the heat in your house, you have to burn the creosote earlier. Instead of insulating the chimney, let's insulate the firebox. This pushes the fire temperatures to over 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit, which will not only combust all the creosote, but all the smoke too. Now our exhaust is typically just steam and CO2. Since there's no danger of a creosote fire, we can extract a lot more heat before the exhaust goes outside. Over the years, we optimized the design. We found we didn't need nearly as much wood, so the burning area became much smaller. We added a stubby chimney inside the system to create a thermosiphon so we could push the heat wherever we wanted. We used a large mass to extract a lot of the heat. A large enough mass would slowly release heat for several days. We came up with a lot of different ideas for pretty. And today, most installations will heat a home with 1/10 the wood, produce 1/100th of the smoke, and people wake up in the morning to a warm house. Safer, cheaper, easier, and more luxuriant. If you like this sort of thing, come on out to the forums at permies.com, where we talk about rocket mass heaters, homesteading, and permaculture. All.
All right, go ahead and we'll let our viewers check those guys out on their own good time. But that's a really neat idea. I think. I mean, I wasn't really visualizing it like that. I don't think where they're using the 45-gallon drum. Is that a pretty typical setup?
Yep. So that's what creates your thermosiphon, the way they described it there. You'll have that drum over top of a little interior chimney stack that comes up that center of that drum, and all your fire from all the smoke from and fire and hot air from the combustion chamber goes up that chimney stack encased by the drum, and all that hot air rises up out of the chimney stack and it cools and it sinks down the drum, and then out your winding chimney passage through the thermal mass. So when they call it a mass heater, it's because you get like a mass of mud or clay or whatever, and you pack that around the chimney, and instead of the chimney going up and down, that initial part kind of snakes sideways through the thermal mass. But it doesn't matter because you've, like the video said, you've already burnt away all of the combustibles in the smoke and the creosote and all that. So, you can afford a chimney that snakes along sideways. It's not going to build up a lot of gunk in there. The other thing I'm doing is I'm anticipating that on days when I'm not getting a lot of sun, so my house isn't getting passively heated by the sun, well, I'm also going to be on solar, right? So if my house is cold, probably my batteries are low. So another thing I'm doing when I build this mass heater is I'm getting a series of thermoelectric generators, and I'm going to have sort of piece of steel that lines the firebox and the thermoelectric generators on the other side of that steel. And what that's going to do is just going to take the heat from the fire and turn it into electricity and charge my batteries. So when I get the fire going, I'm going to have hot floors. The greenhouse where the actual mass heater is going to warm up the greenhouse. So it'll keep my greenhouse plants from freezing and keep them warm, and it'll charge my batteries.
How are you? Well, I suppose there are various ways you can do it, but when you're talking about charging the batteries with the mass heater, I guess how are you converting that heat energy to electric energy?
Thermoelectric generators.
Thermoelectric generators. Okay, right. And how does that work?
You know the little fans that you put on a wood stove, and they just sort of spin around on their own?
Yeah, it's like a convection fan. Like, yeah.
Yeah, those use thermoelectric generators in a motor.
Okay.
So, you sit the fan down on your stove, and that the plate that's meant to go on the hot side, pulls the heat off your stove, turns it into electricity, and runs that little fan. So if you get a bunch of those and wire them together so that they can charge, so they can do more than running a little 12-volt motor, there's a lot of potential in a system like that.
Okay, so it's basically a fan that's being set up as a generator. So usually what you do is you power the fan. You apply power to the electromagnets in the motor that runs the fan, and the magnetic field is what makes it turn. But that works the same way, basically in the opposite direction. So if you make it turn, then it'll generate a current on the other end. So you're making it turn using that heat, and as the heat rises, the fan that creates that kind of kinetic energy in the fan that is transferred through the inductor on the coil to give us the current.
No, that's not quite. So the fan inside those things, to my understanding of how they work, I'm not a electrician or anything like that, but my understanding is that there's a little thermoelectric generator in the base of those units that when you sit them on the hot surface of the stove, that generator generates turns the heat from the stove, turns that heat into electricity, sends that electricity to the fan or to the fan motor. So when you're talking about fan motors and winding them or any kind of electric motor, and when you put current through it, it turns, but when you turn it, it puts current out the other end. Now, the only issue with that is most of those motors are going to be running off of alternating current. They're going to be 3-phase 60-cycle AC, but you're not charging your batteries with AC. You're charging your batteries with DC. So using an electric motor spinning, you'd have to convert the AC into DC. You'd lose a ton of efficiency doing that. and then that would go to your batteries. So if you want DC to charge your batteries, you don't want to have to convert AC into DC and then charge your batteries, because you're losing a lot. So you want to charge DC with DC. So these thermoelectric generators are the ones I'm getting are DC. Well, they are all DC. So there's no real complicated process required. You wire them together to get the appropriate voltage and amperage you need, and plug them into a charge controller, and that goes to your batteries.
Okay, interesting. Now, I guess because I am a little bit of a techie guy, and I'm always thinking about ways to use motors and generators to generate these things, and it wouldn't be much of a loss anyway if you're talking about converting that AC into DC. It's really just like a solid state circuit that might require 2 diodes to 4 diodes, depending on half wave rectified or full wave rectified. But you probably want full wave rectified, and in that case, you're probably losing about 1.4 volts off the peak voltage, and then it's going to be an RMS from there, which is about 0.707. So you get about 70% of whatever your peak full wave rectified voltage is to be your DC output voltage. So, but the AC in a system is like 120 volts, and if you're talking about a little fan like that, you are talking about much lower voltage. So, I take your point on if there's a transducer out there that just converts heat directly into DC, then that is the most direct route to go. And something like a generator like that would be very handy if you had a waterfall nearby, but otherwise you're going to be on the bike a lot. So
they do make these cool little pedal units. One of them, I think, is for you can charge. It'll convert your pedals into 110. Another one will do 220 volt AC. And then there's one that'll do 12 volt DC. You can just charge your car battery with a little pair of pedals and a bar stool.
Yeah, but if you can do the 120, you might as well do that and just rectify to get your 12 volts. And what is it? It's like 14.3 or something AC on the 14.7, I think, is a regular output voltage when you're measuring DC. So that's your RMS AC voltage coming off the alternator that's running on top of that DC voltage. It's just capacitance, I guess. But anyway, now I'm getting a little bit too geeky because I spend a lot of time in that. But again, if you can find a spot near a waterfall and set yourself up a nice Swiss Family Robinson type, wheel, whatever those things are, the wheel on the dam that, you can take the energy that's being released by the falling of the water and transmit that into the wheel, and then maybe use that shaft to generate power. But anything less than, a lot of kinetic energy is really not going to give you much bang for your buck.
They have those kind of cool. You don't actually even need a waterfall anymore. They make inline hydro turbines. So you basically just put them in the water, in any kind of flowing water.
Yeah.
And the current will spin it and generate electricity for you. But yeah. I think electrical generation is only one small slice of the pie.
Okay.
We've got food production, we've got gray water recycling, we've got all the water management that goes on, plus the fact that the house I'm building, it's like an Earthship, but it's got its own extra little additions. So one wing of the house that I'm building, it's going to have a 24-foot diameter geodesic dome greenhouse rooftop, like roof deck.
Nice.
So we're going to pretty much quadruple the Earthship's capacity for food production, although I don't think the roof deck is going to be as thermally, sound as the south-facing greenhouse on the Earthship. So probably a couple months out of the year, you won't be able to grow anything in that, but you'll extend your season for the rest of the months.
Yeah, and make sure that you're growing something that can be stored, like something dry. I know that's that was the original attraction to wheat. Things that could be milled for flour and stored over the winter and stuff like that. So, yeah, interesting stuff. I have I have another video here from these. This is from the same fellow that we're talking about here, the Michael Reynolds. So he's got a video here. It's about 9:20. I don't know if we're going to watch the whole thing, but he gives a little walkthrough here just to kind of give the overview of those 6 pillars that he mentions. So I thought I'd just, food for thought. We'll see what he's got to say here.
All right, we are going to walk through the Unity Earthship here, which to me is analogous with what we call the river on the river episode. And this is just one room. This is the living room. And it has a fireplace for fun. You don't really need it for heat, but it does put out heat and store heat in the walls. It's fantastic. Here are the tubes in the back that you open these and you let fresh air come in and go out the transom above the door over here. And that just flushes the air out of this house with cool air. It's convection. It's just natural convection. It's 8th grade physics. And so there's how the rooms work. Now this room is obviously 3 foot to 6 foot of thermal mass, surrounded with 8 inches of rigid insulation on the sides and 14 inches of insulation on the roof. And so it's a thermos bottle. And this is every room of the Unity is the same. So what I'm showing you here is simply repeated for a dining room, repeated for a bedroom, repeated for a study, whatever. It's the same concept of ventilation and cooling and heating. And of course, the low winter sun comes in and heats the room. And of course, there are your planters out in the sun treating the gray water, which we will talk about later. The gray water is running underneath there, getting recycled to flush with. These are the drapes that if it's really cold outside and you didn't get much sun in the day, you can close this off. And you have this little inner sanctum. And if you built a little kindling fire in there, it would run you out. It's just, you have options. You have the option of being wide open, and you have the option of being closed off from the planter. And this planter is new and young. It'll grow into a jungle. And the sun comes in low. The vertical glass is easier to build and works just as good as anything we've ever done. We're just, after 50 years, we're tuning this thing up to where we call it the river. Okay, now we are in the kitchen dining, and it's the same thing. It's a U with logs going across, 14 inches of insulation, mass walls all around. Here we have the cooling tube, in this case, detailed a little differently. Cool air comes through the tube and runs out the same transom over the door, flushing out the space with cool air if and when you need it, powered by convection. You got the same kind of drapes. They can close this off if it's a cold, cold night. And it's very seldom that you even need to do that. But it's like, I look at these drapes like a sun visor in an automobile. They're a sun visor, you hardly know it's there. You forget it's there. But when the sun's in your eyes, it's there for you. That's what these are. They're not needed very often, but when you do need them, it's great. Gives you operability with this thing. Lets you be open or contained and cozy. This screen is for the screening off the laundry area and an entrance to the bathroom. This is the gray water pump board that sucks up the gray water and circulates it all through the building, sucks it up. It's your shower water, sucks it up and flushes your toilet with it. This is the gray water system. On the World Ecology site, we're going to go into this quite heavily, but this is illustrating what we're going to be showing on that site. Now, this is the back hallway, which allows us to have egress out the front of the bedrooms. That's one of the things that is a fault of the other models, that in some cases we've had to have a problem with egress and permitting. So this is the back hallway. The mechanical is in through here. Here is the power system. We put this box here before there was anything on the site. And this box is the power system. We had the power system on site running the mixers and the chainsaw, and the skill saws and table saws. We had this box here to build with. And now it's the box that powers the house. It's the power system. So we built with the power system that is running the house. We can take a quick peek in here. This is the mechanical area. You can just get in here and see the WAM, the water module. Cleaning staff's got quite a few things in here. But this is the WAM, the water module. And look at this. This is showing us where we are on water. See that? We are 3/4 on water. We are 3/4 full on our water. And it's pressurized and filtered through this system here. There is the pressure tank. And this is the mechanical area of the Unity. Now, the tube is back there in those shells, and it comes through here and goes out, brings the air in and out through another transom. So air flows right through here and out through the transom. This is still part of the gray water system. This is a little bunk bed room for a couple of kids. We use this as an Airbnb. Here is the second bathroom, and it is shower, toilet, sink, backup gas demand hot water heater, not the main source. The main source of hot water is a solar hot water heater out in front that goes through this. If it's not hot enough, this comes on. So your bathroom, your sunny shower, warm, sunny shower, in this building is always warm. This building is always 70 degrees. And again, the gray water system that is in every room. Okay, here is the master bedroom. This is a sort of a petite home. This is not meant to be a mansion. It's meant to be a 2-bedroom home that will take care of you. And it's the same thing, a U with the logs across. And the closet, the walk-through closet is back around here. And it's got a tube as well, just like every room. The tube for the walk-through closet is right here. Go look through that tube, see? There's your ventilation. Cool air is coming out. You feel it? And go right through here, cedar lined closet. And there are lights in this closet, I believe. And come right through, and then the cool air from the tube goes right on out. And out another transom. Every room, very simple. 8th grade physics. Cool air comes through the earth, through the tube, and goes out the transom. There's your air conditioning system. The power goes out in a city, they're going to die of heat exhaustion. Here, doesn't matter what happens. Convection happens. You don't have to depend on a power company for it. Same gray water system still running through the whole house and circulating. And here is the master bath. And again, we're talking about a fairly simple home here. Sink, storage, vanity, toilet, tub, shower, shower waters, plants, sunny bathroom for a warm shower any time of the year. And in here, we've got the drapes again. The drapes will close off the master bedroom for both privacy and warmth and coziness if and when you need it. So these rooms, there are 4 of them. This is a 2-bedroom home. Kitchen, living, 1 room, and a living room. It's a very simple home that no matter what, this home will take care of you with power, with water, food starting, treating your sewage, and built with 45% garbage. This is the river. This is available to the entire world right now, and this will work in any climate. This is what I mean by the river.
Interesting stuff.
Yeah, so I want to, one thing the video didn't really explain that well, and I think it's an important topic to touch on, is that natural air conditioning system. Mm-hmm. And that's probably like my favorite part of the whole thing, just for its beautiful simplicity. So if you got like the outer walls of your house, and they're all buried underneath earth, right? So you run this culvert pipe, 12-inch culvert pipe, the same stuff that they have in ditches and stuff, at 20-foot lengths, and you've got one length, like you saw in the video there, open into the house, and the other length open to the outside, the other end open to the outside, and the body of that 20-foot culvert pipe is just buried underneath the earth berm that backfills the house. So when you open up the skylights and the windows in your greenhouse, as that hot air rises up, it creates like a suction vortex inside the house. So when you open the caps on all your cooling tubes, the air just rushes in, and as it goes through the earth cools it down. And you'll want to angle your cooling tubes away from your house a little bit so that any condensation and moisture will just run down the tubes and outside your house.
Interesting stuff. We got Colleen is asking, any idea how long it took to build this?
I'm still working on the project. I mean, I've got my footings in, I've got my septic in, most of my materials are purchased. It depends. How many people do you have with you? How much of your materials do you have? Are you doing this out of tires, or are you doing this like I'm doing it out of ICF? And I think that's something that would warrant its own discussion as well. What are you building with? What's your budget? You know, if you have no budget and all you can get are waste materials, then maybe it makes the most sense to build with tires or other forms of rammed earth construction, because most of your building material are underneath your feet on your construction site. It's the dirt on your site.
Let's take the standard, I guess. I think it's a 2-bedroom is what we were talking about here. So like just a standard 2-bedroom earth ship, I guess. And what I find interesting about that model is, and I want to hear more about the ICF, because I think I know where you're going with that. But the thing about the earth ship itself with the tires is it's one of those things that could probably go a long way in a place like Africa, you know, where they're absolutely teeming with garbage, and you know, they're already building their shanty towns out of garbage from the massive landfills there, and maybe this would be a more productive area for them to explore. So, any idea, you know, what it takes to build one of these basic like garbage structures?
A lot of labor. A lot of labor. So that's the thing, right? Like, if you're saying it might be good in Africa, I mean, I think it's good anywhere, right? If you have a modest budget, if you have a little bit of money saved up, you have enough to buy yourself maybe an acre of in an unorganized township. You know, and then once you've blown that money, you really have not much else left. Well, then you're in a situation where you have to build out of waste materials. So you're building out of tires and you're ramming them full of earth. And then that understandably takes a very long time. I think even the best, and packing tires is its own technique as well. You've got to ram earth and rocks into it with sledgehammers. And I think like a good, strong adult can get one of these tires done in maybe 10 to 15 minutes. So you're dealing 4 to 6 tires an hour. Is if you're using something like ICF, if you have the money for it, it stacks like Lego. You just build it up like Lego blocks, put rebar inside it, pour concrete in the top, and you're done. Yeah.
And just for our viewers, if you don't know what ICF is, it's like I think one of the brand names out there is something like Technoblock, and yeah, it's just like Jake is saying, they're styrofoam blocks that fit together like Lego, and what you do is you just kind of stack them up, and they're hollow, and then you fill them up with concrete, and so now you have an insulated concrete wall when you're done. And like you said, you know, you would use rebar to bond all of those different sections of concrete together, because that's just the way concrete goes down, is in sections like that. But yeah, I considered using that for a project in the past. It just wasn't big enough, I don't think, for the like the project itself wasn't big enough for that investment. But that is kind of a very futuristic material. So yeah, I'd be interested to hear a little more about your experience with working with that stuff and what that's like.
Well, it's art. two of the parts of the house are actually going to be rounded sort of turret type structures, and all the blocks are straight square blocks. So how do you build a round wall out of square blocks, right? That's something that we've had to wrestle with. Actually, maybe I'll bring Ken in to talk a bit more about this one aspect, about working with the materials.
Yeah, sounds good.
Because it was, yeah, it's different. Like if you want to do anything unconventional, you're like building a rounded wall. You've either got to reach out to the manufacturer and get it custom done, or you've got to radius the blocks yourself. So we'll just get Ken here.
Hey, Ken, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here. So a lot of the manufacturers don't really make the round blocks. So you're limited. They make 45s, they make 90-degree corners, and they make straight blocks. So we had a bit of an interesting time. Basically, it comes down to mathematical issues. You figure out the inside radius of the wall, the thickness of the wall, and when you take it all into account, you can build a jig, which we did. We figured out how much of each block we would need for each radius to remove, and basically we just went from there. We built a test row. So we did one complete 24-foot circle. Worked out within probably 1/8 of an inch. So we just built a jig and we just started cutting blocks, making copies. So the 14-foot circle is a lot tighter. So you're obviously taking out more material to get the block to curve. And even the manufacturers told us, like, there's not very many projects like this, and they're super interested in seeing how it goes.
Oh, you're somewhat pioneering this technique then, I guess, with this project, is it?
Well, I mean, yes and no. It's never been done with blocks. I've concrete past. I used to build parking garages and curved entryways for condominiums, like the big curved walls. So I've got a lot of experience building curved formwork, and I basically took that understanding and moved it into a different medium.
Okay, so basically, yeah, it sounds like you can invest about as much as you want in this stuff. I mean, you can go with a half garbage structure that is pennies on the pound, or you can buy the techno block stuff, and it sounds like it's easy enough to work with that you'd be able to get basic sort of geometric structures done. But once you start bringing in any kind of curvature and stuff like that, now you're getting into the territory where you might want to bring in an expert. So does that sound about right?
Yeah, that's not bad. And again, touching on the labor versus money standpoint, like the ICF blocks, they save a ton of time in the packing of the materials and all of that. Right. But when you get back into the curved walls or any abnormal structures, then you're kind of putting labor back into the project again. So it can be as you want, or as intricate as you want, really.
Yeah, it's all about trade-offs, just like everything, I guess. So Maitre Chenu is saying, I missed a big chunk of the podcast, and if you might have mentioned it, but to be safe, have you checked out the Arctopia videos? Passive solar greenhouse in northern Alberta. Great work. I have not, but have either one of you gentlemen heard of that? The Arctopia?
Not Arctopia specifically. There is this old farmer down in Nebraska who's pioneered these techniques of growing tropical trees in Nebraska climate, and I would imagine it's probably similar techniques to what they're using. They use geothermal air in a really interesting way. So they'll dig a 200-foot trench down 8 feet deep below the frost line, and they'll 4-inch pipe, 4-inch like drain pipe, open again, just like your cooling tubes in the earthship work. They're open at one end, then they'll go under the earth for 200 feet, and they'll come back out into your greenhouse. Now, 8 feet down and 200 foot of length, the ground is about 5 degrees Celsius. So you take -40 potentially like air, frigid air that'll kill your plants, and you're pumping in +5 air. You're turning that into +5 air through the ground, so that it just barely won't kill your plants, even your tropical ones. Like even Florida gets cold days; they'll get snow every now and then. And if that would decimate orange trees, then we wouldn't have Florida oranges. So as long as you can keep the temperatures survivable for your plants, you can keep these things there over the winter. So, but getting back onto sort of some of the cost, we talked about costs on the project and how long does it take one of these things to build. I mean, it's all really on the spectrum of time versus money. Time, money, and labor, right? You have whichever one you don't have enough of, you're going to need more of the others. And we've kept costs down on the project in a few kind of creative ways. So, as I'm sure you know from your time in the military, any big purchase you want 3 quotes, right?
Yeah. In Ottawa, absolutely.
So, no contractor. If you get a contractor to build you your house, no contractor that I know of is going to be calling around multiple different suppliers trying to source your materials for cheaper. They're going to go to the supplier they go to. They're going to get the materials for what they cost, and then they're going to build your house with them. But what we did with the big project, the big purchases like steel, like the ICF, like insulation, we shopped around and saved probably 15 grand just by going with suppliers with the better deals. And bargain hunting. And then for the glass, now we pulled out a huge win on the glass where we got basically $15,000 worth of glazing for $500. We did this by going to these old glass suppliers and asking them for their tear outs. Like when they go and do a job and they tear out some like big 5x7 shop windows, if the glass is in usable condition by the time they were selling panels for $30. Now we went to pick up our glass a couple of weeks ago and realized that they'd either broken or given away or sold on a bunch of the panels that I bought, the used panels that I bought from them. So he took me into this back room in their warehouse and he showed me the room of unclaimed glass where someone will put in an order, then they'll sell their house and the order will come in and no one wants to pick it up. And the guy has like a freaking mechanic shop's worth of room worth of this brand new glass. So we're getting that at a discount. So whenever we need huge, big panes of glass, we're just getting it for really cheap.
Nice. And I'm going to throw back to the Earthship website here because I guess this is a pretty good metric to go by here. The 6 human needs for a harmonious life on Earth are food, energy, clean water, shelter, garbage management, and sewer treatment. So there are a couple of things there that we didn't really talk about yet. Is the garbage management and the sewage treatment. What are you guys doing for that?
Well, garbage management, I think Michael Reynolds' garbage management philosophy was more just like build your house out of it. It was more of a sort of a global scale waste management on Earth, which was like if everyone builds their houses out of garbage, we wouldn't have a waste issue. As far as the area that I'm in, it's an unorganized township, so there's no garbage pickup. So basically, like whenever you need to, you take your own garbage to the dump. And the trade-off in return for that is you don't have building inspectors, you don't have bylaws, you don't need building permits, you don't have high property taxes. So yeah, I'll take taking my garbage to the dump for that trade-off for sure. As far as what was the other one? It was waste management and sewage.
Yeah.
Okay. So the difference between this house and Earthships in general and any other kind of country or off-grid home is you've got 2 separate systems for wastewater management. You've got a gray water system and you have a black water system. So the only real difference is the gray water system because every house with a septic tank, that's your black water system. Mm-hmm. So,
and just in case anybody's not familiar with the term, the gray water is what you do the dishes and shower with.
Yeah. It's the least contaminated of your dirty water. So every drain from every sink, shower, washing machine, the only exception being the kitchen sink because particulate goes down the kitchen sink and we don't want that in the system. So all of that water gets directed, instead of going straight to the septic tank like it would in any other home, it's going to the greenhouse under the cement pad of the greenhouse where the planter cells are buried. So when you saw the Earthship in the video there, you'll see these little planter beds in the greenhouse area. Well, those things actually get dug down a few feet, and they get lined with a pond liner. And each one of those cells is connected together through pipes underneath your concrete floor. And whenever you use a sink or a shower or the washing machine or whatever, that water just goes straight into your planter beds of your greenhouse. And the bacteria in those planter beds breaks down the soaps and skin cells and all of those products and turns them into nutrients for your plants. So your gray water spends some time in the planter cells getting sort of processed and stuff removed from it, getting kind of recycled. Then when you go to flush a toilet, instead of flushing drinking water, your toilet tank doesn't draw from your drinking water supply. It draws from the supply of the gray water in the greenhouse that's already been treated by your plants.
Got it.
So
yeah, that's a really neat idea to feed the gray water through the plants like that for treatment. I hadn't really come across that before I started looking into this concept for the podcast. So,
and it's fertilizer for your plants; they grow faster.
Yeah, and how it's pressurized. Like there is a power requirement for it. I noticed it was pressurized in the video there too. Is it?
Well, no, that's only the pressure tank. So basically, the berm behind these Earthships on the north side, on the north wall, in the berm, they bury a big water tank, and that'll collect the rainwater off of the roof, the rain and the snow melt off the roof, and it'll store it in a big cistern in the berm behind your house.
Mm-hmm.
So the pressure tank is pulling water out of that big storage tank, pressurizing it so that you have like household water pressure.
Okay, so that's like 15 psi or something, I think. Yeah, and it's pretty standard, I think, even for country living. Like when people have wells, you need that pressurized tank because a municipal system with a huge reservoir is gravity fed, and that'll give you enough pressure throughout the township, really, just from raising that water tower up higher than anybody is. Opening their tap at, and that'll give you enough pressure. But when you're not on that system, you need a way to pressurize it. So that's something to consider as well. And since we're on the subject of water, what about the clean water component of it? You talked a little bit about collecting it off the roof in berms and stuff like that. And is there a filtration system that's that fits with this model as well, or are those commercial filtration systems usually?
Yeah, I mean, you can make your own sand filtration systems. I don't know if they would pass muster as far as the health inspector, but no, there's no. So to answer your question, shorter answer is no. There's no like specific water filtration system, because you could have multiple potential water sources, right? Like if you have a well, you might not be using a cistern to store rainwater because you have a. Now in Ontario, if you want to build to code, there is no code that will permit rainwater as a drinking water source. So, yeah. So, I mean, in the law of Ontario, you have to build structures to code. However, in an unorganized township, there's no one checking and making sure you did. You should build a structural code for safety, but when they throw in these things into code that really all it does is make you have to buy new materials. Its only reason for existing in code is to make you have to buy new materials or feed money into the construction industry. I wouldn't fault anyone for taking those with a grain of salt.
Well, and a lot of it has to do with covering the asses of the bureaucrats that represent the township. And that's really when you're dealing with a municipality and a township, you can go into the registry of deeds and you can see that this house was built a certain way, and they're basically saying that their records are accurate, and the house that you're buying was built the way that they say it was. So a lot of the code is kind of 20% more, say, than you really need in order to get 100% of what they want. And the fact of the matter is that, I mean, I'm living in a 60-year-old house here, so I'm pretty sure there's all kinds of code violations in just a regular older home. And I gotta wonder, it sounds like a prohibition on the collection of rainwater in Ontario. It's like one step down from that. It's almost like they're trying to keep you on their system and foster dependency. But I don't know. What do you think? Am I being paranoid there?
Oh, I don't know. Why would they ever want to do that? I mean, they want strong, independent communities, right? That's why all through COVID, don't you remember all the messaging on the CBC telling us to grow gardens and telling us to be independent? Don't you remember all that? Don't you see now all the government messaging saying we need to improve our personal security and maybe hunt more, maybe fish more, maybe grow our own food? Yeah, you hear all that messaging, don't you?
Oh yeah, it's right up there with everybody should be a responsible firearms owner. It's part of your civic duty. It's right up there in that government messaging with that.
Yeah, that's not compatible with universal basic income, so I don't think they like it.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of stuff that we're doing that they don't like. Especially looking at my what do you call them? The metrics on the podcasts over the last little while here. Anyway, they seem like they're really tanking, and it's all at once. And I'm kind of going, yeah, I think we're on somebody's radar here for sure. Okay, so okay, I want to hear a little bit more, I think, about the energy. That's the other component of it here. So you mentioned, there's the kind of sorry, I can't even remember what you call them now, but they're the thermal generators. And what else are we doing besides like transferring that thermal energy into some kind of a DC power? But what's kind of the main power source that you're going with here?
Well, I've got 10 kilowatts of solar panels.
Okay.
So I don't think I'm going to put all 10 on the house. I'll probably put a couple on the workshop. I've got a I got a 25 by 50 Quonset hut that has to go up. So some of them will probably power that. I've got a 600 watt 40 wind turbine, which I'll tie into the system. So again, 2 is 1, 1 is none, that old prepper adage. I like to have multiple different ways to produce power. We're also saving on power by trying to be efficient. So there's this whole thing between alternating current and direct current. Direct current's more efficient, but most of what we use in society is designed for alternating current. But if you can run like the things that you're using a lot, like your lights, your pumps, whatever fans I might need, I won't need that many fans because of, as you saw, like how it works with convection. But I'll need some fans for the geodesic dome greenhouse. The fridge, that's always going. So if you can run those things on direct current, can create a lot of efficiencies in your system. Because the other way I'm going to create efficiencies in the system too is all the wall outlets, like all the standard household wall outlets that you see, those are all AC. So those all need to run off of the inverter. And whenever the inverter switches on, it drains a ton of power. So if you're so much as charging a cell phone off of one of those wall outlets, your inverter has to come on. So much more so than just the power required from the draw of the battery of your phone, you're also requiring that inverter to power on and the current just so that you can power that phone. So everywhere I have a wall outlet, I'm going to have a 12 volt DC plug. So if someone needs to charge a phone, they can plug in a car charger and do it in the wall off of DC and not have to kick on my big giant inverter and drain the batteries. So there's things, if you're creative when you design your system, you can create efficiencies and save where you're going to be drawing power.
I'm just pointing out for one of our viewers here, Melanie is asking, I may have missed it. What website are we looking at, please? Just so you know, this is the Earthship website. So this is earthshipglobal.com. and Earthship biostructure is what we're talking about here. Loosely speaking, anyway, these are off-grid or independent kind of living options. And I'm listening to you talk about the power production component of it, and I guess this is where I get interested. And it sounds like you're talking about primarily a combination of wind and solar. I see this guy's got a satellite dish here, so that's probably connected to something to take some power. And I saw a couple of models here where folks are still using fossil fuel to some extent, like they have propane tanks that they use to run the stove, for example. And that's actually a pretty viable option, because that can go a long way, and it doesn't use any power really. You just need something to light it to get started, and you're all set. So it's not necessarily the case, at least I take it, that this is all just for beatniks. It's probably there are various degrees of beatnickery that you can build one of these things with. But it's just an option to be explored even for freedom-loving patriots, given the current state of affairs, right?
Well, the faster we can become independent from an abusive system, the better off we're all going to be. I mean, the digital currency is coming. I don't know about you, but I'm not. I opt out, hard pass. So if we want to be able to be in a position to say hard pass on all this stuff, we need to put ourselves in a position. No one's going to do it for us. So, if you don't like the system and the economy being used, then get out of it.
Well, I think a lot of people got coerced into this vaccine because they're just so utterly dependent on the system at this stage. And that's not, I am too. I found myself in a very fortunate position where I managed to skate out of the military 1 month before the vaccine mandate came into effect. And it was all because I was just trying to line up my medical release in time to start school in the fall. So it was pure luck, really. But I know there are a lot of people, their families depend on them, and this is just such a difficult decision to make. And I know, like, I've been in that situation too, where it's like you really don't want to have to go along with whatever, but you're not in a position to really rock the boat, because you need to support people. And at least if you have the housing component taken care of, like this is kind of everything, right? This is what it allows you to do. Is it allows you to say no under any circumstances. You can walk away from any job, and you can still feed yourself. You're still going to be okay, no matter what. So the less you have to depend on them for, the better off we're going to be, because we saw what they've been like throughout the course of this pandemic, where they're using absolutely every system that we've grown dependent on, that we've trusted, in order to make life difficult for political dissidents, in the worst possible way, in the worst, kind of exploitation and kind of disregard for human dignity and bodily autonomy that we've ever seen. But I think there are a lot of people out there that if they were in a better situation, one that's more harmonious with life on Earth, then fewer people would have been coerced into taking that toxic jab. So, I
mean, like I was, if we're gonna talk about the systems of the house, I think one of the what would maybe warrant more discussion, more so than actually like the nuts and bolts systems of how you build one of these things, is how do you, like, once the system, you're right, once the system has you, it's hard to get out of it. Like, I'm still trying to make my way. I'm still dependent on the system in a lot of ways. So I think the discussion of, like, wherever you're at, how do you start that process of detaching yourself from the economy, of detaching yourself from the system merge, and integrating ourselves into our own communities? How do we form these communities? Where do we form these communities? What are our priorities? Like, these discussions need to start happening, and they need to start happening like 2 years ago.
Yeah. At least Tim is saying, Tim is saying, how will you pay property taxes?
My $150 a year, I don't think is going to be that much of a problem. Are they talking in terms of digital currency? Yeah, well, in an unorganized township, yeah, I pay $150 in property taxes a year, and yeah, to be determined. I'm not participating in a digital currency, so come what may, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think everybody's at a hard pass for that right now. I'm not seeing a lot of enthusiasm around the digital currency. It's all coming from the establishment, and I think everybody's looking at it and saying, "Who asked for this?" And especially in the wake of the trucker convoy, where we saw this flagrant abuse of the system, the Emergency Measures Act, in order to inflict a financial hardship on political dissidents. And this is the kind of thing that harms families. It kind of brings the kids into it and everything in a very underhanded way. And yeah, I mean, so now I think people are starting to wake up to the fact that these are all basically fulcrums on which the state can leverage us. So the way to take that fulcrum away is to kind of go self-sustaining in this regard. Is that about right?
Yeah, but people are going to have to accept that there are going to be lifestyle changes. You can't have, if you want your cake and eat it too, stay as a part of the system and enjoy vaccinations and digital currency. I was talking to one of my high school friends about this. I'm in the process of deleting and permanently erasing all social media. So in that process, I was talking to one of my friends from high school, and we were talking about the whole thing. Like, well, I had to get the jab, or how do we stop them from doing this? And I go easy, steadfast disobedience and resistance with infinite resolve. And he's like, oh yeah, but I had work and job and bills. I get it. And then in the very next sentence, he goes, oh yeah, well, they brought in all of this stuff because nobody stopped them.
Well,
we just talked about steadfast resistance and infinite resolve, and now you're talking about nobody's stopping them. We're back full circle. If no one else is going to do it for you. If you want it stopped, do it yourself. If you want to get off grid and make your life sustainable, do it yourself. If you want a better system, make one yourself. No one's going to do it for you.
Yeah, and I think this is kind of a component of the Orwellian nightmare that seeps in over time. Is we've come to think of the state as our daddy or our husband, who fixes all our problems and keeps us safe all the time. But that's not really the purpose of the state. The Hobbesian Leviathan is there to secure the territory. Security of the person is your responsibility in a free society. And all too many people, I see them as just they're kind of. It doesn't even occur to them to do it themselves. They see a problem and they say somebody should do something about that. And I think what they mean by somebody is, the state. The state should do something about that. And they're not there to fix all your problems, and everything comes with strings attached. So just buyer beware whenever you're engaging with the state. It is, for all intents and purposes, just a socially licensed racket. It's a protection racket, and it's not even socially licensed at this point after 18 February when it, broke the Constitution, the social contract with its citizens, and broke the Non-Aggression Pact, initiated violence in response to conversation. So, that's where we're at right now. Is that the kind of abusive daddy you really want in your life? Probably not. Once he kicks you out of the house the first time, you just you shouldn't go back, folks. They're not going to change. They're still the same people. So
yeah,
just
thinking of the government like your dad or your husband only makes sense in context of an abusive relationship. A controlling, manipulative. They're lying to you. They're doing shit behind your back. Excuse me. They're doing stuff behind your back. They're They're
Well,
abusing.
I see that as an indication that they really need to be kind of cut down to size. There's a real power imbalance here, and by default, in that they are the only ones with the legal authority to initiate force, to coerce another. You know, none of us really have that right. We're not allowed to initiate force. We're not allowed to coerce others. We basically relinquish that freedom and consolidate it within the state as a trade-off for being able to live in a secure and peaceful society. You know, the more we depend on them like a husband, and the more we kind of hand that power to the state, like the more odious it's going to become, because concentrations of power necessarily like lead to cruelty in a historic context. And yeah, right now I think the aim is to starve it of resources first of all, and to overwhelm it with complaints, with legal processes, things that have teeth. I think there are a lot of people in the state that are kind of in that Huxleyan echo chamber where they're oblivious to the kind of suffering that's going on all around them and the exploitation that's going on all around them, because everything's great for them. But, you know, so now our task is to make things a little less great for them, and to starve that thing, cut it back down to size so it's back in its proper place, as a guard dog, as a watchdog, and not a daddy.
Well, we can't make things not so great for them if they're always in a position to make things not great for us. Yep. Which is, again, like getting as independent as you can. And it doesn't mean necessarily do what I'm doing and move completely, you know, off grid and nuke all your social media and grow a beard and wear a lumberjack shirt and, you know, shoot bears. I don't know. You don't have to do that. If you're, you know, in an apartment in the city, you can get a couple of 55-gallon drums. You do a vertical potato grow on your balcony if you have the right orientation of your balcony. You can improve your situation. No matter what your situation is, you can improve it by throwing in some principles of sustainability and doing whatever you can do, whatever you can afford to do. But something's always better than nothing. And even if it comes down to, you know, you buy a couple of batteries and a couple of solar panels, and you can charge your phone and run your router when they cut your power off.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it too. Like if you're somebody who's in that situation and you're in the city, I'll go back to these 6 human needs for a harmonious life on Earth. You know, if you're in the city, then the clean water, sewage treatment, garbage management, and shelter are kind of already squared away. But what you could probably use is a little bit more food and energy independence. You know, especially given what they're doing to the prices of these things these days. And it certainly wouldn't hurt you to maybe work on having some additional clean water on hand, because who knows, you know, how things are going. Nothing seems to be running very well anymore. The food's not as fresh in the grocery store, and we can't seem to respond to any kind of a natural disaster these days. So how long is it going to be really before you know, we start seeing that kind of ineptitude really seep into some of our foundational infrastructure, like water treatment facilities and stuff like that. So I'm just saying, you know, we don't know the full extent of the instability just yet. So anywhere where you can create some stability in these areas, I think it would be well advised to do so as we move forward. But look, I think that last comment you made is a pretty good way to kind of wrap things up. Did you want to add any final thoughts here before we sign things off?
I mean, I think we've covered a lot. My final thought would be like, just get up and do it. You know, whatever has been stopping you thus far from making your life more sustainable, it's not that hard to take baby steps. Start taking baby steps into it.
Yeah, and as I've said before, I know like it's overwhelming, you know, and when you're feeling overwhelmed, sometimes I think all the time, really, the best therapy is just working hard to solve your own problems. And you'd be surprised, I think, at how much serenity really comes from doing that. Yeah, I'd encourage anybody out there who's interested in this kind of thing to start pursuing it. There's a lot of valuable skills to be had, and security to be gained along the way. So with that, folks, I'll say stay frosty and stay safe out there.